I have different ways of describing many composers. You know, I think of Mozart as like a perfect Fabergé egg, that everything is just crafted so beautifully. I think of Schubert as a babbling brook, meandering and beautiful. And I think of Beethoven as like beyond the sun. It's beyond the stars. It's beyond what we're able to comprehend. Playing the Great Fugue does feel like that. Beethoven breaks all the rules, all the compositional rules. What we're told is proper, what we're told is kosher. At that time, people really enjoyed listening to music that had a very clear delineation of who to listen to. You had the melody, which everyone loves to hum along and sing along to. And then you had like the bass line, which supported the melody and provided the harmony. And then you had the filler material, which made the melody sound pretty. That was kind of the whole thing. And of course, there was an element of all that in Beethoven's music, but he started to care less and less about those rules. The first violin did not always just have the melody, that he would want the cello line to come out and, you know, poke its head through. In the Grosse Fuge specifically, what he does rhythmically is still in many ways incomprehensible. Within the span of one beat, somebody will play 4 notes. Somebody else in the group will play 3 notes in the span of one beat. Somebody else in the group will play 2 notes, you know what I mean? And so he's stacking 4 on top of 3 on top of 2, and then what ends up coming out sounded unintelligible, it sounded foreign. We are still, to this day, trying to hear all those things. And I don't think any group in the world has been 100% successful yet. When Beethoven says that he was writing this music for the future, I don't think we've reached that future yet that he was talking about. I think that's still to come, and we're still a long ways away.
Quite strange. even to the modern ear. These quartets are written in the last years of Beethoven's life, so I think he's absolutely turned inward. Some of them don't get performed in his lifetime, and he's fairly well isolated and almost completely deaf by this time. This is in 1824, 1825, 1826. He dies in 1827. But to say that they are profound works is to simply utter a banality, and better to suggest or strongly suggest or order everyone with the opportunity to listen to them.
The Grosse Fuge, like that was a piece I grew up with my whole life, listening to recordings, loving it, just being like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I would just rock out in the backseat of my parents' car, you know, when the first iPods came out. And that's what I had loaded on there. I think you can deduce from that I was not a cool kid in the classic sense. My father is one of the greatest lovers of classical music I've ever met. I mean, he's more knowledgeable about the subject than I think I ever will be. And I think it's because my father is aware of music in the broader context. As somebody who didn't become a performer, he was able to experience music through a much more broad, general love of it. He was able to connect what he heard with the history of the time, with other cultures, what was going on. He passed that on to me from a very early age. I mean, you know, it's not that I had a choice, you know, I was like 4 years old and in his old Saab 9.3, you know, and he would pop in like a cassette tape of Bieber's Rosary Sonatas and things like that. And, you know, that's the stuff I grew up with. My father is an engineer, a ceramics engineer for the defense, a private think tank for the Defense Department. He played clarinet in high school very seriously, and actually this was in Columbus, Ohio, and his best friend ended up going to the Eastman School of Music in Rochester for clarinet, and then became the principal clarinetist of the Hawaii Symphony. My father, for reasons I think stemming from his family, could not pursue music in the same way, so he became an engineer, but gosh darn it, he still lived his love of music to the fullest. My love of Beethoven, I can track that down to one particular concert when I was 12 years old. I went to go see a great string quartet, the Brentano String Quartet. My dad took me along. And they started the concert with Beethoven's great 12th String Quartet in E-flat major, opus 127. And that opening is just these huge cosmic chords. When they are played with such unified precision, with such unified approach, and just such just intonation, your whole body resonates. And I had never experienced this before, but as soon as the Brentano Quartet put their bows on the string, it was, for the first time in my life, I feel like I experienced and lived harmony. Then I just became obsessed. Ever since then, it was Beethoven, Beethoven, Beethoven. My father would take me to Tower Records and I would immediately go to the Beethoven section and pick out as many recordings of the string quartets that I could. And I remember that I would just, on the way to school, on the way back from school, during lunch times, you know, I would just always have my headphones in and I would always be listening to a string quartet. And some days it would be the early quartet, some days it would be the Great Fugue. I think to this day, even if I don't listen to them as much as I used to, I think that that obsession still lives on within me, that this kind of eagerness and this desire to learn as much as I can about them, how they're constructed. And, you know, I feel like now sitting in rehearsals with this quartet, knowing that I have the tools, that I've been given the tools to actually play these, to actually understand them, I mean, that's a huge privilege. I mean, that's an amazing thing and one to be grateful for. And then, about a month and a half ago, when we sat down to play it for the first time, it was like, well, we only had 10 days to put it together, so it's not like we could just arrive here and learn it from scratch. We all had to study it beforehand. We all had to have our parts marked up and know how to play it. So we just sat down, we all looked at each other and we were like, so what do we do? And then we're like, I guess let's just play it. And we picked up our bows and we just went through the whole darn thing. As soon as we finished the last note, I got this like insane chill throughout my body. I was like, that was a moment that I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life. Like we just experienced the creation of the great fugue.